It's a project of the Equal Justice Initiative, and the monument. Its official name isn't the Monument to Lynching, but it's a monument, about or for people who were lynched, post Civil War. But the
Mhm.
Legacy Museum follows, from the slave trade through the era of mass incarceration. So that's what the broken chain link is about.
Yeah, I figured it was something that had to do with social justice.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Hi, Linda.
Hi,
Hi,
Nice to
Linda.
see you.
good to see you. I'm just going to adjust my camera for a second. It's a little bright.
Gotta get the perfect frame.
Well, you know, listen.
No, I hear you. I'm like, Ed's got a nice,
No,
art directed
no,
background.
this is where my wife normally does her, and also where we do our family Zoom calls. This is actually the first time I've ever had a Zoom call with my own name under the box.
Uh,
My wife had to do all this shit for me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Big day.
Yeah.
Very good. Are we on, or is this happening?
Well, make sure Linda's ready. Make
Yeah,
sure she's
no.
comfortable.
I'm ready.
I don't.
I'm just kind of wondering what exactly we're going to be covering so that I can kind of get some notes out in front of me. Because we like to quote statistics, but I have no statistics in my head.
Cool.
I can't remember anything.
Yeah. So I don't know, Ed, if you're sort of leading this, or if we're all just sort
Okay,
of.
so my understanding was that it was just going to be a very informal conversation that's primarily focused on Chad's exhibit at the Pressa House Gallery. But then through talking about the exhibit, we talk about these so-called gun issues. Um, so, but just in a, and so what Rigo had said was that Chad would introduce Linda and then introduce me, and then we would, I guess, just start talking about the show. And for me, that would probably be asking you about how you came to this. And but yeah, I don't want to. We'll do that when we do that, I guess.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, if I'm introducing everybody, that sounds kind of like I'm the host. And I think it's maybe another way to do this is for everybody to sort of introduce themselves and, what it is that what they do. And then maybe from there, answer the question like how you got into activism, because I think we're all activists, whether through art or philanthropy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. Introduce ourselves.
Cool. Linda, would you like to go first?
Sure. I get the easy part first. Talking about ourselves.
Yes.
My name's Linda Magid, and I am a San Antonio resident. I am a mom and a fitness instructor, and I am the local group leader for the Bexar County group of Moms Demand Action. Moms Demand Action is a national organization, and each state in the country has a chapter, and then some states have groups that are broken down by cities. Some cities have more than one group, depending on the size. And in San Antonio, we have one group that covers the city. I came to Moms Demand Action because I'd been an activist for many years, kind of on and off. And around the time of, at the time of the Sandy Hook shooting, I was completely devastated. My daughter was young, completely related to the fear that people were experiencing from that event. And I just cried for 3 days. I couldn't even imagine, and still cannot imagine, what those families are going through. And watching the United States House and Senate and our representatives do nothing, absolutely nothing, was disheartening and really made me angry. And whenever I get angry about an issue, I take action. So I was doing a lot of work for campaigns, and when as a volunteer, and when that time ended, I decided it was time to join a movement of people who were getting something done. And so that was Moms Demand Action. And I started with just a little volunteering here and there, and then I stepped up into leadership, and then the group needed a leader. And so I said, sure, I'll do it, because it's actually, the organization is so well designed that I wouldn't say that it's easy. There's nothing easy about being part of the ending gun violence movement. There's nothing easy about that. But in terms of organizing, it's really well designed, and it's something that I find really important. So we can focus on the work of communicating to people who don't know the facts about gun violence, how it happens, who it happens to, and we can take our time to demand that people who represent us take action instead of worrying about all of the structure and everything. All of that's really well in place. So that's pretty much how I came to this position.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us today, by the
Thanks.
way.
Thank you for having me.
And being a resource for people at the show too, and giving them sort of an outlet to channel some of this these feelings into action. So
yes,
thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you want to go, Ed, or shall I? You're on mute.
At least I'm not a cat. You see that video? Judge, I'm not a cat. So yeah. Are we good?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I in theory, I'm supposed to be an artist. I think most of the art I've been doing of late has been earthworks in the backyard and drainage projects. But that, I guess, since 2002, when I had my first show, and then Rigoberto Luna Press the House Gallery put me in my first group show. And so that's how I got mixed up with that guy in this particular institution. But I mean, I've been making art for this I've been making art since before I could walk. But as far as being a full-time artist, it's been since 2002, and I've been living in San Antonio since 1999, and since before being a full-time artist and working for other artists. Sorry, there's a damn mosquito. But it seemed like the arts and being imaginative, I think, is what is at the root of activism, or successful activism. Because it's always easier to just like, well, this is the way things are, and so it kind of, creativity is important in both fields, and also maybe being over imaginative, sometimes maybe even being impractical, so that maybe you can it's almost like negotiating, where you actually ask more than you're going to get, so that when it comes down to compromise, the same way if you're making a bunch of work for a show, not everything you're working on is going to make it into the exhibit. But if you if you expect more than you know is even possible, and if you dream bigger than is even possible, then I think that's really the the root of getting any real change made. And so yeah, I mean, I've really been fortunate to have had a lot of elders and mentors and in various fields of art and activism, and so just hearing their ideas and their struggles and their jokes, all that's important. And so yeah, that's how I got mixed up in this stuff.
Was there like a time when you weren't an activist artist and just making sort of art, and then there was a switch, or how
Well,
do you
I
call
mean,
it?
I don't think I would call, like, in self-identifying, I wouldn't call myself an artist activist. Um, uh, and certainly not necessarily on this specific issue. Um, but a lot of my artwork deals with history and deals with social issues and deals with inequality, deals with, I mean, there was an entire show that had to do with police misconduct. So a lot of my artwork does, like your work, it stems from research, and things that piss you off, um, and also things maybe you want more people to know about, and in your background in advertising, you have to have some sort of a hook, but then there's always a fine line. And anyway, so yeah, it's just, um, I mean, I certainly I read a little bit of your background. I was For most of my childhood, I was raised what we call a fundagelical, like Southern Baptist. So, I was in like a paramilitary Boy Scout troop. I grew up around guns. I shot guns. I had Every time I went to the hallway, there was a um, there was a gun hanging on the wall with the in its holster with the bullets. Um, so I mean, my stepdad had swords from his ancestor from the Civil War, which is another thing that that there these guns just didn't appear here by accident. It's the result of our history as an empire, and just constantly expanding. From the original 13 colonies, when there was there was an escape valve where it was just like, oh shit, there's some issues. Well, why don't you guys go over there and take the land from those people? And that involved guns. And so yeah, you have just this long bloody history, and then just a mass accumulation of weapons, and then just like a violent culture that's just it just saturates every aspect of our lives. I mean, you have people who, when they talk about San Antonio, one of the favorite monikers is Military USA. And I mean, and it's not, this isn't the first empire that was Military USA. It was Spain, was France briefly, but so yeah, I mean, we're steeped in it, but I don't know. What was the question again?
All right. Well, I guess that leaves me for my intro. Yeah. So, Chad Ray is how you pronounce my name. And I'm a multidiscipline artist and artivist, which is really sort of the combination of art and activism. That title, by the way, was kind of bestowed upon me because I think at one point I was calling myself a social impact artist, because a lot of the themes that I deal with, in addition to American gun culture, is mental health and climate change and other social justice issues. I'm not comfortable with any of those titles really, but it works for me somewhat. So I got interested in the gun, what is now the gun show, or in gun culture. I mean, it's been part of my entire life as well. Growing up in El Paso, Texas, with my blue collar family, about God, guns, oil, country, and so grew up around guns. At a very early age, going out and taking guns out to the desert and going and hunting for rabbits, and actually killing a rabbit. Decided I didn't like killing things. I think I was the only person in my family that didn't like killing things. I do still enjoy shooting guns, at a pistol range. I won't ever own a gun for protection or, for anything for that matter, because I'm actually scared of them, for what I might do to somebody else in a quick minute, quick second, split second, or what I might do to myself, with those. And so, I've never owned a gun. But yeah, as early as junior high, hearing stories of post offices getting shot up, and that term going postal, that was when I was young. A lot of these early mass shootings, I lived in Aurora, Colorado. I was there when Columbine happened. And it's just been sort of like an ongoing theme, I guess, in my life. I've known people that have committed suicide with guns, and it's just, for no pun intended, a trigger theme or word. Anything around guns really triggers me emotionally. And about 2.5-3 years ago, there was a mass shooting, and I can't remember exactly which one it was. But I woke up at 4 a.m. with this image in my head, which was, the sort of cartoon bang, 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 with the G just crossed out, or the G's. So it would be ban, ban, ban. And, that sort of got me started on this path. I was really fixated on American gun culture. And for the better part of a year, I was making work, for this show called The Gun Show. And that, I did a pop-up version of this show 2 years ago. And then, because the issues aren't going away, have an opportunity, Rigo invited me to Press House to present the show again with some new pieces. And so, there's always something in the media that is inspiring me to make more work about this issue, and to bring attention to certain issues around American gun culture, and ultimately, teach people about issues, or get them to channel that emotion into some action. And hence, having Moms Demand Action as one of those places where they could do that.
We really appreciate you involving us in that. And I do want to say, because, one of the unfortunate things about our, I guess, our culture right now is that if you say anything that sounds unappreciative or friendly toward gun ownership, I'll just say, because I can't think of anything better to say, then it's assumed you want to get rid of all guns. And that is not the truth. Moms Demand Action is not an anti-gun organization. It is an anti-gun violence organization. And I was on that, Clubhouse, that new
Mhm.
app where you can go
Yeah.
and listen to people have conversations. And I was in one that was actually about policing, just for my personal interest, wanting to hear what they had to say. And then the conversation turned to firearms. And someone was making the point, she felt that firearms need to be, the access needs to be lessened, right? We need less access to guns. Certain people. She wasn't putting out policy. She just said we need to look at how accessible guns are. That's all she said. And someone immediately got on there and said, well, we live on the border and we really need our firearms.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not arguing against that or for that. I can't speak to that. I don't live on the border. But I thought it was interesting and also frustrating that someone just said something very extremely vague about access to guns, and the immediate answer was, well, we really need ours.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues, is no one was saying the people on the border should not have firearms. That was not at all what she said. She just said generally. And so that's one thing that we find really frustrating and difficult in these conversations, because there are laws in the books that are not well supported. There are loopholes to gun laws that, if they close loopholes, people would be safer in many different ways. And that would not stop law-abiding citizens from owning a weapon. You might be surprised. I have been to a range twice. We actually took our family there one time when they were visiting, because we thought, you know what? I know one thing that this family has never done. They've never been to a gun range. And it was all adults, and they all had a chance to, use a gun on the range, and they really enjoyed it. And I've done it myself. So it isn't there. I just really want to, we feel we have to break down that myth over and over and over. And so, I kind of agree with you. I mean, it's like thrilling, but also kind of scary, and also really intense. And I mean, that was just my experience. But, we are really about smart gun laws, and making sure the people who own a gun have the right to, because they haven't been convicted of a crime that would stop them from having a gun, that they aren't someone who might hurt themselves with the gun, and that children should not have access to guns. I mean, it's not real complicated, and it's the kind of thing that people go, oh, well, I can agree with all those. Well, yeah, you can, but the message that's been put out there, from people who disagree, is something different from that.
Do you think that perhaps like statements from people like Beto O'Rourke lead people to have that perception? Like when he made the comment about, we're gonna go and
hell
take
yeah, we're
guns.
gonna take your guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. It's burned into my brain.
Yeah.
What I will say is that an organization like the National Rifle Association, they've done the most to disparage our organization, because it's always good for them to have a scapegoat, somebody who they can point to and say, see, if you let them win, they're going to take away your guns, which isn't true, but they created that fear. And there's other organizations like the NRA. In fact, there are some that are even more staunch in their position, if you can believe it, here, around the country. And certainly they show up to the legislature when we do, on issues around gun violence and gun safety. So, there are definitely people out there. I would say that our allies tend to be really smart about how they talk about ending gun violence, because that's what we're committed to. And then sometimes people just get carried away with the moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. The title of the show is actually #TheGunShow, because I wanted to insert myself into the conversation on social media. Although a lot of those tags are people showing off their biceps and not exactly related to guns. But, I think, the internet trolls out there love hashtags and going after anything that's gun related, or mass shootings or whatever, just to insert their argument. And so I'm constantly, dealing with comments on social media, and that tends to be one of the top arguments. I think that, like, I somehow want to take away everybody's guns, or that's what my position is. And to be honest, like, certainly I have a position on gun control and just guns and gun violence and just the culture around guns. But I would hope that my work asks more questions than provides answers, and so really I'm trying to create discussion and dialogue around these difficult issues. And so I wanted to ask both of you this question. Do you feel like there's a topic that is off limits when it comes to art, or even activism for that matter? And maybe not just the theme, but how an idea is expressed. And the reason I bring this up is because some of the pieces in the show feature photographs of mass shooters, which a lot of people will suggest, honor the victims and or the survivors, and not give any attention, don't glorify the mass shooters. And there was some commentary back and forth with someone on social media saying, well, and don't do this. This isn't good. You shouldn't be talking about these mass shooters. And my point was, well, maybe that is the point of the art, is to talk about how media is adding fuel to the fire, and then, the notion of where do we draw the line? Do we not make a documentary on serial killers because we're fearing that that's going to create more serial killers, or that, we don't make horror films, or, do we not talk about issues that make us uncomfortable? Will they go away? And so I'm curious from both of your perspectives, from the artist perspective, but also, someone who's very close to the front lines, if there is a line, or, certain things that are off limits in terms of the role of advertising and activism.
Linda?
I'd go ahead.
Well, in my experience running an art space, the only thing that really was off limits was breaking glass and bodily fluids. And I mean, I think if the bodily fluids were contained somehow, then there might be an exception. And in fact, there was actual blood in one exhibit, but it wasn't on the floor. They were. So yeah, I mean, in general, I'm not one for imposing limits on artists, but and those pieces you were talking about, I did think about that issue. I wasn't horrified. I wasn't thinking like, oh, Chad shouldn't be doing this, but it would maybe cause more questions or possible cause for concern if you were to put these exact images on apparel. So if you were to mass market them, rather than in this context, if you were to sell T-shirts with their images on some of them, then maybe it would be like, oh, really? I don't know. But again, I'd have to have the pieces in front of me. I think for the most part, though, it doesn't seem like in any way anyone could misconstrue them as being a glorification of this obviously disturbed person.
So,
and I think the point that you were trying to make was that they were disturbed, and perhaps maybe society should do something to address the root cause of that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, the other part of my say argument was, the number of people that are going to see this exhibition, and I would even go further to say the number of white males that are going to see the exhibition, you know, are relatively small, and so I'm not worried about, creating any mass shooters as a result of this. But it's interesting that you sort of draw the line at almost like, is it the commercialization of it, or is it the mass media approach? Because I even have a problem putting a price tag on them in the gallery, because the first time I did this show, nothing was for sale because I just felt like I was profiting off of tragedy. And so, yeah, what's the difference between like a t-shirt and is it, yeah, and selling it?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it would cause more questions. I mean, remember when there was the I mean, still the using Charles Manson's image on. Remember there was the like Guns N' Roses merchandise that featured his face and whatever. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, I'm not comparing them at all. It just, for whatever reason, I guess just because maybe the numbers, there would be more T-shirts and they'd be more places than,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that but yeah, I mean, I think with the text, it's clear. It's not just like those Manson photos. It's where it's his
Yeah.
face that's unobstructed by any text. I don't know.
Great.
Well, for us as an organization, we don't use the names of the shooters because we want to focus on the survivors and we want to focus on the victims. And so that's kind of one of our practices. But the context is totally different. In an art show, the context is not. I mean, it's one of self-expression. That's your self-expression, and so I can't see. I can't imagine at this point something that would be off limits unless it's something someone asked you not to do and you did it. That probably wouldn't be very good. But I think anytime when someone walks into an art gallery, I would like to think that they're expecting themselves to think.
Yeah.
I'm walking into the space with the intention of thinking about things, considering things, mulling them over, being confronted by something. And so the context is so totally different.
You're right.
I mean, I think it's important to in your context, if it is to challenge people's understanding or their assumptions about or their laziness about media, then I think that that's a great thing because, I think that we don't, as a society, ask enough questions and make enough demands, I think, of our media. I mean, they still use the term gun control, which we have stopped using and other organizations have stopped using for years because it presents a it is not a match with what we're trying to do at all. We're not trying to control guns. We're trying to end gun violence. Right? So, there's a lot of, every time there's a piece that they don't use the term gun control, yay, they figured it out. So I think we need to ask a lot more questions, and I do think we need to make more demands of our media in that way.
Cool.
Yeah, what you were saying about the gallery. I wish more people had that given that understanding when they walk into an art space. And I was just talking to Rigo about disclaimers and how that there should be maybe a broad disclaimer on every contemporary art space, regardless of the show, that kind of says what you were talking about. Be prepared to use your brain, be prepared to be amazed, be prepared to be bewildered, be prepared to whatever, be
Hmm.
uncomfortable, be prepared to think. And yeah, because sometimes it's just like, oh well, for this show, the content. Not talking about your show in particular, Chad. Most of the time, it has to do with nudity. Um, People are like, well, we got to put a door on, we got to put a sign that says 18 and up or whatever, or and so it seems like if there were just a blanket thing for every contemporary art space, it's just like,
Hmm.
beware.
Mm.
Well, my husband and I really love contemporary art. I'm not even talking personally now. I mean, that's what I gravitate to. We were just in San Diego, and I went to the San Diego Art Museum, and I was like, European art, nah, not interested. Like, where's the contemporary art? That's all I want to see, because
Yeah.
that's what we enjoy. So I know that experience, and I've gone into galleries and been like, I don't understand a thing that's happening here, and I'm totally okay with that. Like, this artist had something to
Mm.
say, I didn't get it. Oh well. Like, it's not. It's there. I don't feel that it was a waste of my time or it was a waste of their time. It's just one of those things that you got to kind of take that chance. Maybe you'll connect, maybe you won't. But I think that's why contemporary art is so amazing. I mean,
Mm.
it's why it's so fun.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I walk straight through those rooms or don't even stop. Way more interested in contemporary art. Um, but you bring something up. That's my dog Ringo checking out some cats. Um, so yeah, you bring up an interesting question about um, the interpretation of a piece. And I want to. It's a similar sort of question for both of you. But Ed, do you like how much or how forward do you want your message to be? Like, should it be super clear, or do you like leaving room for interpretation?
I mean, I think I've had a problem in the past with museum curators trying to kill the magic. They want everything to be spelled out in the same way if David Copperfield were to go up and say, and this is how we made the Statue of Liberty disappear. It's and they want to get rid of the mystery and any of the nuance. And I want to know exactly how you think about this, and what is this about? I want a concrete. Well, it's like so many times when you're creating a piece of work, the meaning might come later. Yes, there may be a piece you make because of an issue you care about, but there are also layers of meaning, and then viewers can bring added meaning to a piece. Many times I've seen that where it's like, I didn't even think
Mm,
about that connection you just made right there. And it's
yeah.
so brilliant, and it further illuminates what I was trying to say. And so if I had it all spelled out right there, then we wouldn't have had this beautiful moment. So I think a certain amount of ambiguity is nice, and then also, like Linda talking about not using the word gun control because you scare people away. You don't want people to close off. And that's another
Mm,
thing where humor is often effective. People are disarmed by that. And then but yeah, leaving things a little more open, and then also just not feeling like people are bombarded with so much advertising anyway, and so much you know so many images. At this point, it really is visual art. It's almost um it's a strange, it's almost like a marble sculpture, when compared to mass media, even contemporary art. So sometimes, especially when you're talking about issues that are happening up to the minute, and then also, in my case, when you're talking about some of the pieces taking a couple of years to complete, you start to you start to ask questions about, well, what am I really using my time appropriately? Could I be doing something else maybe to be, illuminating? But I don't know, because there are those moments where you do receive that feedback, where people tell you that that piece meant something to them and they never thought about that issue like that before. Um, and so and and then also to be, just the fact that art is a luxury activity, and then it's supported, by wealthy benefactors and institutions that are backed by these people as well. You have an opportunity sometimes to influence people who make decisions. And so, yeah, for whatever that's worth.
$3.
At least.
Should I send you my my Venmo or
Yeah,
Cash App?
yeah. I'm making notes here. It's adding up. You're doing great.
I wanted to add, before I let my dog out, who came in unannounced and now doesn't want to be in here anymore. Okay, so I'm not in the art world. I other than enjoying it and being a purchaser, but I think that the curators need to trust the audiences. Just sounds like they, if they spoon feed people the meaning, then people will feel more comfortable in the space. People don't like to have, an open-ended experience. But
Yeah.
I think that's the assumption. But I think they need to trust the audience that they, that's part of the experience. I mean, art is an experience. It isn't just, and I don't know if this is what you meant with the Ed, with the marble statue, and then that's kind of art, and then media is something.
Bubblegum.
Yeah, bubblegum. So I think that art is not just something you just see with your eyes and then goes into your brain. Then that's it. Stops at your brain, and then that's this information. Oh, I see colors. It's like I have an experience looking at this. We looked at pieces where, like, I feel like I'm moving looking at this, and it's black and white. And so, trusting those who walk through the door, that they're looking for, the full, all their senses having something to do with looking at the art, not just eyesight, is important. And it's important for you all, because otherwise you'll be locked into expressing yourself in a very specific way, and that's not what art is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I always have issues, or not issues, but challenges writing artist statements, because they just feel contrived, and to your point, like I'm trying to over explain something. And a lot of times art is a very sort of personal process, and I'm making art for myself. I'm exercising my demons, or trying to manage my own emotions with certain issues. That being said, I spent 25 years in advertising, which is really what I would call the dark arts of persuasion, and a lot of my techniques are based in that world, and how to not only like get attention or cut through the clutter, but be very clear in what that message is, and what it's funny because a lot of people in advertising in the creative departments would think of themselves as creative problem solvers, but the problems that they're asked to solve are design problems. They're media, not just media problem, like, the way we're talking about media, but like marketing problems. Very rarely is it social problems. Sometimes you'll work with a nonprofit and create PSAs or, those sorts of things. But Yeah, I mean, I was always dealing with boardrooms, you know, layers upon layers of people to get ideas out into the world. And once you actually do, it's like great because it's this massive platform, and in some cases, it's a global platform. So if you're creating, you know, commercial for Nike, you know, and people are talking about it, you know, at the water cooler the next day at the office, that's like pretty powerful stuff, you know. And so, you know, now it's like on a much smaller level, and I actually get to um, have contact with my audience, you know, and be able to see how it's working, you know, and how it's affecting them or what their interpretation is of it. You know, and so, you know, the other thing that I'll say is like a lot of my work is very subversive in the sense that it looks like it's attracting you in one way, but once you sort of are sucked in, you're kind of gut punched, you know, whether that's like through the title of the piece. You know, and I was explaining this to another artist at the opening where it was like, he asked me, he didn't know any of my background, but he was like, were you in advertising? Because your work is very, like, it's everything has a message behind it. And as I was talking to him, I realized that even the title cards of the art, which, you know, traditionally goes sort of at the bottom right of the piece in the same way that a logo and tagline do in an ad. That's traditionally where they go. And the way that you sort of consume an ad is like through some sort of headline that brings you in, or some iconic or provocative image, and that sucks you into the copy, and then you read that, and then you get to the tagline or the slogan, and that's sort of like the big bow on the end of it. That sort of completes the message loop. And I've realized that my titles, which go in this lower right hand corner, become almost like taglines, you know, and you get so much more meaning just out of that. And I do find that having that makes it a lot more powerful than without it. You know, when you remove those titles, or at least in the way that I name my pieces, there's a lot more left open for interpretation. And I wonder how much of my message is actually getting through, you know, without that.
Yeah, they're important. They are important. But I guess
I just wanted to. Oh,
no, please,
I just wanted to add that I guess the difference between you, Chad, and me is that you take your anger about the issue and you put it into art, and we moms take our anger and we put it into showing up at the legislature for an entire day to listen to our representatives tell us how the only way it's going to be safe for us to walk to our car is if we have a gun in our pocket. So that's where we take our anger. You know, we write letters to the editor, we support communities in our area who are dealing with gun violence, and we let, you know, the people who represent us know that we want safer gun laws. But it's important that people find their way to have that anger and frustration fuel them, because I was talking to a guy. Yeah, so on Thursday, the National Moms had a big phone bank where we were calling into other states and asking supporters if they would call their senators to ask their senators to support legislation that would end the background checks loophole, which very briefly is that yes, you need a background check to buy a firearm from a licensed seller, but you can purchase a gun from a person online, meet them in a Walmart parking lot, and get the gun from them with no background check. You can also do it at gun shows. People walk around with their guns in their backpack to sell, with a list of what they have for sale. You go outside and you can purchase the gun, no background check. And we want that to stop, because that's how people who shouldn't have guns get them. So I called a gentleman, had no idea who he was. He answered the phone. And I said who I was, and he said, well, do you know where you're calling into? And I said, yes, I'm calling into Senator Langford's district, his state, it's Oklahoma. And the guy on the phone, who's a supporter, spent the time on the call trying to convince me that this was a waste of time. And I was really flummoxed because I've never had that happen before. I've talked to a lot of people on the phone, a lot. And I've never had anyone say, there's no point to this. It's not going to make a difference. I've heard, annoyances and frustration, but never like solid, just heels dug in. And I finally said, well, listen, I mean, this is a national campaign. They think it's going to make a difference. Nothing helps. So I just said, finally, well, this is what I'm doing today. If you can make the call or not, it's totally up to you. And he said, well, thank you very much. Goodbye. And he hung up. And I thought afterwards, that's how they win. They win by destroying our hope and our belief that our anger and our frustration can make a difference. And if every person in every state that had a senator like Senator Langford, or in our state, Senator Cruz and Senator Cornyn, who really refused to take action to end gun violence, then they absolutely win, because they're going to silence all of us because we just get too depressed. And while, that gentleman, maybe it was just a bad day and maybe tomorrow he would make the call, I don't know. But we have to remember that no matter how frustrated we feel, and some days where it seems like we're not making any movement, every step really combined all makes a difference. So while maybe people will learn about Moms Demand from your art exhibit, but they're not going because they want to learn necessarily about gun violence. They just know that Pressa House is having a showing and they want to go see what it is. Every step really makes a difference. And after all these years, the National Rifle Association is really in very bad legal dire straits. And that started because Moms Demand in every town for gun safety contacted the IRS about questionable spending that they saw publicly. And that kind of got the ball. And then some people started to file lawsuits, and look where they are today. So who would have thought that a mom from California who started a Facebook page could take down the NRA? Says simply, it's a lot more complicated than that, but no one ever thought that could happen. And it did. So if you're ever faced with that feeling of, I can't do anything, especially about this, yes, you can. You really, really can. We get the despair, but you can.
So on what that person said about what that the gun show loophole sounds, I think to almost everybody it sounds sensible, but I can sympathize with somebody who says, is that really attacking the root cause, or is that just kind of biting away at a symptom? Should we, especially when Chad is talking about, he talks about that we have to address mental health, which ultimately mental health is healthcare, and the fact that we don't have healthcare for all in this country, is that should maybe we be, I'm not saying don't push for that, but should moms maybe be demanding healthcare for all? Should moms maybe demand that we not increase the military budget by $20 billion and instead take that $20 billion and make sure that, maybe, especially in light of, we have the global pandemic, about, maybe trying to revive some of these New Deal ideas of the Civilian Conservation Corps and the WPA, where people are actually involved in their communities, getting paid to repair broken infrastructure, feeling good about themselves, feeling like their lives matter. Because again, when we look at, going back to the national media and advertising, there are so many people who, and especially by their elected representatives, they feel completely worthless. And then, of course, you combine that with easy access to firearms. We see the results. And at the same time, we had. I mean, yeah, there was. It just seems like there is such a direct connection to the imperial program of this country, officially being militarily involved in 7 countries at the moment. In fact, it's much more. But just this idea that, I mean, and using, you know, AR-15s they're deadly, but they're not as deadly as depleted uranium ammunition. That's something that that's the gift that keeps on giving. And those certainly were used in Gaza. Be using they may be used in Gaza this afternoon. And COVID relief money goes to pay for that kind of stuff. So I just I understand, I sympathize with someone um, being frustrated about maybe not wanting to focus on that. I'm not trying to diminish your work at all, Linda.
Of course. It's a good question.
Just to me, like it just it's just something that's so glaring, and it's so frustrating that neither party and that no one in general is talking about peace. No one is talking about, let's stop bombing brown people and taking their stuff like that, and how that contributes. Like, external violence begets internal violence. You in I don't know, you probably know more than I do, but in at least some of these cases, these people were trained to use these weapons by the United States military. Taxpayer dollars went to train these people to kill people. And then they come home, they're not given ways to find fulfilling lives. They're completely discarded. They've already been used. And then also just the way that in this country, for so many people who don't have economic opportunity, their path to economic stability comes through violence. What's the best, you know, among the best paying? If you just have a high school diploma, join the military or join the police force, which also kind of leads to my next question is, will moms demand that, as long as we have something called the police in this country, should we be talking about disarming them? And especially after some of these shootings where you had people whose own communities are not subjected to constant harassment and police violence, it's easy for them as a solution to violence. Understandably, they don't want to see their kids killed, but how offensive it is for some people when they hear, well, in order for my kids to be safe, we need someone with a gun with a uniform in the school. And then disproportionately, the people who are going to be victims of their violence are going to be kids that don't look like theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I'm sorry to ramble, but
That's okay.
It's just like such a nebulous, huge thing. But it seems like it just seems like maybe there's something missing as far as like the root cause, and maybe I don't know. Maybe that's not even possible to have. It seems like you do have to have a narrow focus in any organization. But yeah, I just had a question about the disarming police, or what's the connection to the military actually bringing in weapons or bringing in people who are trained to use them. I don't know.
Well, I think those are all good questions. And I think that you are just a really big thinker. Like, you are like 300,000 foot view kind of guy. And I think that's important. I mean, some people are good with the minutia, and you look at the big picture. And I think that's vital, because you asked really good questions, and I'm going to address as many of them as I can. So with regard to mental health, so the media has kind of allowed the term mental health to be a scapegoat for a lot of the shootings that we see. Well, in reality, someone who has mental health problems is more likely to hurt themselves than someone else with a firearm. I did learn just Thursday that 80% of people who have died by suicide, not necessarily with the gun, but by suicide, have not seen anyone other than a general practitioner in a year. So there's an assumption that if you have suicidal thoughts, or someone kills himself by suicide, that they maybe have been seeing a doctor, they've been seeing a psychiatrist, and it just didn't work. The truth is, they probably don't even realize that they're in a crisis. They don't say anything, and then they hurt themselves. So we don't talk about mental health a lot. We do, but not as much as we need to resolve the mental health problems in the country, because then that's going to stop gun violence, because that makes it seem like people with mental health problems cause all the gun violence, and they don't. So where we focus in that area is keeping guns locked and with the ammunition stored away, or so that people can't access the guns, like teenagers can't access the guns if they're having suicidal ideation and they, they're very impulsive. So keep your guns locked up so your kids can't get to them. I mean, that's a major message of Be Smart, which is one of our gun safety programs. Then the other piece of that is what we call red flag laws that we try to get passed in every state. We haven't been able to pass in every state, but they have passed in some states that allow the courts to remove firearms from a home of somebody who seems like they may hurt themselves or others. And that can include someone who's dealing with depression. So that has saved lives. We know that it has. Much of the gun violence happens through people who know each other. Yeah. So family who are fighting, friends who are fighting. Domestic violence, of course, is a massive, massive problem, not in the United States, but in San Antonio specifically. So when we talk about access to firearms, why closing this loophole and making background checks for everyone, it slows down the process, first of all. So someone who's acting impulsively because they have a vendetta, it's going to be harder for them to get that weapon. And so that does help to stop gun violence. And we've seen it happen, but it's hard with states, right? So people always point to Chicago, it's so violent there. And it is, but the guns come from Indiana. They don't necessarily start in Illinois, because people can easily go to Indiana that has much looser gun laws than Illinois. So that's why we want a national solution, because if it's state by state, it can't always make the difference that we want it to. And then as far as the police, so we as an organization, we haven't taken a hard line on the police issue, but we absolutely say that police violence is gun violence. Police use a gun to shoot someone in the ways that we have seen. That is gun violence, and that is the kind of violence that we fight. Our local organization supported Prop B very vocally. We believe that that police officers need to be held accountable for their actions. Domestic violence can be a problem. This is my personal issue in this area. And if a police officer has been found to commit domestic violence, they shouldn't be on the police force, because not only are they hurting the people in their lives and they have access to a weapon, but they're also going on calls where domestic violence is happening. So who are they going to be helping in that kind of situation? Just a small statistic, when a gun is present in a home, a woman is 5 times more likely to die from that gun than if a gun is not in the home, because the gun is there. Women are threatened with guns. They are not just shot, but they're threatened with them. It's a way to keep women from leaving. If you leave, I'm going to kill you and our kids. See, I have my weapon right here. They can wear it in their pocket. So, that's how people can get them. So to answer the question, can it make a difference? Absolutely. Is it one piece of the puzzle? Absolutely. And yes, we have to really stick with gun violence because that's who we are. But it doesn't mean that and it doesn't mean we're only with legislation. We also, like this afternoon from 12 to 2, we were at the Greater Faith Institutional Church on the East Side at a rally that they had because they had gun violence on their property 2 months ago. And the pastor's great grandson was shot. He was 6 years old. He's alive. They can't take the bullet from his heart because it's too close to it. And then another person was shot. Why? Because a guy was mad at his ex-girlfriend and her new boyfriend. And so he brought a gun and hid behind a tree. And when they got out of the car, he shot at them and he missed and he hit other people. This is the real gun violence. This is the prevalent gun violence. The big shootings at the schools and the Walmarts, they're tragic and they're awful, and that's what the news covers. But they don't cover what we consider a mass shooting, which is 3 or more people. And that happens in people's homes, neighborhoods. San Antonio last Saturday, a whole group of people got together for a car rally, which is like just looking at people's cars and checking them out. And a 6-year-old girl was killed. And so, and the question is always, where did that person get that gun? That's what we think. Where did they get that gun from? And, is the likelihood of them having gone to one of our licensed sellers that we have all around the city? Probably not. They probably got it from a friend or got it off the internet.
Yeah,
I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah, I mean, he did a really great job of tracking that and answering a lot of those questions. It's not a one solution. It's complicated. It's so complicated, and you can only sort of all those issues that you're talking about, Ed, I think are addressed by other organizations. And everybody has their sort of specific role in the bigger picture. I think it would be way too much for any one organization to try to, tackle all of those issues. But it's probably why these problems have existed for so long, because it's a rat's nest of
well, I mean, there's the international arms trade is certainly profitable, and there's a revolving door between the Defense Department and the arms industry. And I just read a statistic that I think the United States is responsible for roughly 40% of international arms sales, and some of them that I guess are continuing to the United Arab Emirates, to which I guess we're also continue to be involved in the genocide in Yemen. So anyway, it's just it's very profitable, and like the current Lloyd Austin, the retired general, who's the head of the Department of the Defense, came from Raytheon, and I think he was expected to get like a $1.7 million payout after selling his shares before becoming the head of the Defense Department. So it's I mean, those companies, to me, I think are as far as like just the sheer numbers of lives lost, there's just no comparison. And then when you talk about, I mean, not aside from arms sales, when you're talking about sanctions, where it was like, what was 1.5 million Iraqis were supposed to have died from sanctions, from not having access to basic medical equipment and other things that were being blocked, like during COVID with Venezuela and Cuba. So it's just, it just seems like it's and especially when you have corporate media, they're not going to talk about these issues because they're owned by conglomerates that profit off of these sales and profit off of death the same way that, Winchester and whatever profits off of death. It just seems to me at a much grander scale, and a scale that unfortunately is just not an address. It's not addressed. I guess just you know if you talk about peace, people just, I don't know, think you smoke too much or something.
Linda, I know when we talked, we had you. I mean, this call was scheduled for an hour, so I'm both want to be respectful of everybody's time, but also just the length of this video, I guess, just from a content perspective.
For sure.
So unless you guys have any other questions or things that you want to talk about, maybe I'll ask you guys one last question. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Linda, because I'm not sure if you've had time to look at the work in the show or not, but for both of you.
I haven't. I was invited, but yesterday and today were just totally impossible. Okay. So right. definitely going to go.
So then I'll just ask you, Ed, what's your favorite piece from the show and why?
Well, I can tell you one of my favorites, but the first thing because my wife and I watched the virtual thing. I wish we could have gone by the gallery and seen it in person, but we haven't been there yet. But she really liked the trophy, the #1 in mass shootings. But yeah, she was like, well, not just here at home either. But yeah, that one was, I mean, obviously the thoughts and prayers gun is striking, and just a great piece. There's and I don't think, when we were talking about maybe work hitting you over the head, that's not, I wasn't trying to talk about your work or this show. That's not what it comes across as. Very smooth, and it's enjoyable to look at. It's well crafted. But so I think for me right away, that one, the thoughts and prayers, it's this gun that has a little, what is it called? The flag of,
it's just like one of those bang bang.
No, but the piece itself, the title is,
it's called American Flag.
Oh, American Flag. So it has the little flag sticking out of it that says thoughts and prayers, like the bang
That's
flag.
awesome.
I mean, there's a diversity of work in there. And that when Linda was talking about the suicides, there's that piece. It's called 18 and up, or what is it?
With the AR-15.
Yeah.
What's
the title on that?
18 ages 18 and up.
Ages 18 and up, and that's immediately what I thought of. Because it has it's this AR-15 that's kind of, I guess you'd describe it as like offset, where you have the off edge with the colors kind of bleeding, and then the barrel is flipped back at the potential operator of the weapon. And I don't know exactly what weapon was involved, but I had a family within my larger family that does not exist today because of a firearm that was in their house. And like, my uncle's not around anymore, and neither is his son, and neither is his wife. And it was like, it's almost like in some of those pieces where you had the social media images where people are using guns as a cultural signifier, and also there's a lot of camo and hunting and the posing with the dead animals and whatever. There's this idea that, quote, guns teach responsibility, and I almost wonder if that's why my cousin had a gun or was given access to a gun, which if anybody looking outside would, they'd say like, this kid has some issues. And I don't think giving him access to a gun is a way to quote teach him responsibility.
Mm.
And so the way, I don't know exactly how everything was pieced together, but the way it was relayed to me was that this very troubled young man was in his room, in his bedroom, and he had this gun in his mouth. And his father tried to get the gun away from him. The gun went off, killed my uncle, and then the kid killed himself.
Mm.
And then my cousin, I'm the cousin who's not from that immediate family, but roughly the same age as the uncle who was killed, had to go and deal with the now widow and had to deal with this house and whatever. And it was just, yeah, I mean, it's
It's a tragedy.
yeah.
It's a total tragedy, and I'm so sorry that happened.
And so much of that stuff is yeah, I don't know what to say about it, but I mean, there's a lot of powerful work in there. And yes, I really like the trophy. I like the AR-15 piece, and yeah, just a lot. There's a lot to look at, a lot to take in.
No, this is great. I mean, I love hearing feedback. This is typically stuff I don't get to hear. So the more interaction I can have with people that see the show, the better. So thank you very, very much, both of you, for doing this. I know it's a lot to ask on your weekend, but thank you so much.
Happy to do it. I just want to say, the one thing you said when you're like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, you said, well, this stuff is, and then you said, I don't know. And I said, it's preventable. Mm-hmm. Gun violence is preventable. And that's the thing that we just keep saying, many different ways, but it is. And if anybody who's, if anybody's interested in knowing more about Moms Demand Action, you can always go to the website, which is momsdemandaction.org. And I'm really easy to find through the website. You can go to events and click on an event and sign up for something, or I'm pretty easy to find on social media. So we don't have like a Facebook page that's available to everybody. It's private because we can't have trolls coming and trying to find us and mess with us, because they do.
Yeah.
And then if you go to see the exhibit, our information is there that you can find, and we're happy to answer questions or have you join us.
Yeah. Ed, do you want to plug, where can we find you?
Well, a piece actually that has to do with police violence called Beast was just acquired by the McNay Art Museum in November. Congrats. Which was cool. I don't know if it's up. I'm not sure when it's in the collection. I'm not sure how it's going to be displayed or if it will be displayed. The one that the San Antonio Museum of Art has is in the back, apparently. So anyway, I think
are you on social media?
I am, but I don't use it. It's, I mean, just the level of toxicity it was just for my own mental health. I had to step away some years back. I mean, they still exist. And in fact, during the summer, I created an Instagram, or I had to sign up on Instagram in order to I guess it was, I'm trying to remember the guy's name, Steven Jackson, I think, had posted some things and I wanted to see more of them. And so I had to sign up, and all of a sudden I'm getting notifications. So-and-so is now following you on Instagram. And I don't even have, there's nothing on there, but I have all these Instagram followers apparently. But no, I'm not. And I don't think my website even exists anymore. So
all right. Yeah. The elusive
Yeah, I'm elusive.
artist. Good luck, good luck, people finding him. But
That's right.
If you need to find me, you can just talk to Pressa House Gallery.
All right, sounds good. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess this is it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Rigo. Bye, Linda. Bye,
Bye.
Chad.